Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar program titled Go Paperless in Your Practice, How to Make the Efficient Transition to Mobile Documentation, brought to you by Medical Economics, Physicians Practice, and sponsored by Nextgen Healthcare. My name is Todd Shryock of Medical Economics, and I will help facilitate today's webinar. Today, we will have two experts discussing how to go paper-free in your practice and reduce administrative hassles. Before we get started, let's cover some logistical items. We want today's webinar to be interactive, and our experts will have time at the end to answer audience questions. Throughout the webinar, please type your questions into the chat. Now let's introduce our presenters and get started. Owen Dahl is principal of Owen Dahl Consulting and author of the new book, The High Performing Medical Practice. Our other presenter is Travis Wright, Regional Director of Ophthalmology Operations for Eye Center South in Dothan, Alabama. Owen, take it away.
Everyone to our session today, and the format that we're going to go through is I'm going to take a few minutes to sort of outline and look at the background on the idea of technology and paperless activity, communicating effectively with folks. And then really what we want to do is we want to take advantage of Travis's knowledge and experience. So I'm going to ask him a series of questions, and I think we'll have a good interchange. And I want to make sure that everyone feels like that there are, hopefully we'll answer a lot of your questions, but if we don't, let's make sure you've got opportunity to ask questions as well. So without any further ado, just want to kind of put this into context. You know, what issues are you facing relative to the paper and the paperless model and that sort of thing? And so just the general EMR demands, the time that it's taken to put all that together, utilize it, et cetera. The second bullet is, managing the relationship with patients and then managing the relationships with your referral sources and other outside entities. And, how does the paper flow between you? How does it flow in the office? And how in particular does it flow to your referral sources and your patients? And one of the keys on this is how much time has been wasted relative to managing how you process and pass paper back and forth between your location and your referral sources, or as a referral receiver, how have you handled that particular situation? So what we want to do is we want to kind of take a look at that and what can we do to eliminate that waste, not only a waste of time, but in particular waste of resources. And I'm excited about talking to Travis about this because I know that they've done some incredible things in the Eye Center South approach to what's going on. So again, just in a general context, what I did is I put three different flowcharts together. The first one is on the screen right now, or a process map. And basically, the way I look at it, there are 5 steps in every office visit. And there are going to be obviously variations on this, but you have check-in, you have your triage, you have your contact with your clinician or your provider, you have your post activity, and then you have your checkout. And so if you look at that, and the way that I put this together, obviously the oval symbol is the start, the rectangle symbol is processes, and the diamond symbol is where you have decisions to be made. So as the provider completes their visit, they have to create a care plan, and they create a care plan by updating the chart and generating documents that are necessary to make things happen. So I think it's really critical that we look at that. So that 5-step process, and then obviously we could have gone into 100 different decision points in this particular scenario. But the key issue then is, how do we handle the medical information as it flows through this process? And in particular today, what we're interested in talking with Travis about is the output of the documentation, output of that visit that goes on. So this looks like a pretty jumbled, if you will, process map that I've put together. But I did it on purpose to kind of help you go through looking at the various points in the decision. So as administrative folks and as physicians, and basic clinician type of approach here, how do we handle this? So, what do we do with that output? And let's back up for a minute. How do we create it? So decision point number 1 is creating that output that goes to the referral source or to the patients, or both. Is it during the visit? Is it immediately post-visit? Or is it sometime later? In any event, you make the decision as to how you're going to move forward creating that output. The second decision point is, when then so that and when I say how to create it, that means that input of it. Then what do we do? Is the technology available to us? So do you dictate it? Do you type it? Or do you use a point and click method, or maybe a combination of those types of things in creating this information that gets sent out to whomever? So you create the document, but you create the document. If you dictate it, do you have staff do it, or do you outsource it? So a decision has to be made as to what's the most efficient way, the least wasteful way for you to get that data into that document that you really want to have created. That document then is part of that EMR that you have. And the document also then is sent to where? Let's see, it's sent to the referral source. So if it's sent to the referral source, then decision point number 4 is, do you fax it? Do you email it? Or do you send it by secure text? So there are 3 different options that are available to you. What is the most efficient for you in terms of how you get that information to your referral source? The extra component here is also, how do we post that information so that the patient is aware of what goes on? So do we put it in a portal? Do we send an email? Do we send a text? Again, decision points about how is and what is the best way to do it. So what I hope this picture is created for you is, let's stop and think about what we do right now. And why I want you to do that is because that sort of creates a baseline for you that says, this is how we kind of create this process, and then how do we make this process work? As you analyze this, what are your bottlenecks? What are the gaps? What are the barriers that are in place that create issues for you? Literally an hour and a half ago, I was seeing one of my physicians that I visited, and when I got home, in my email was a note that says, please check your portal, and you'll be able then to see what information happened relative to the visit itself. So from a functional point of view, having that document created early and getting it to someone really makes a whole lot of sense. And I, as a patient, was pleased to have that experience and have that opportunity. So let me back up just for a second. So if we think about this particular slide and this particular process is what we want to focus on with many of our questions today with Travis as to how he has been able to make this more efficient for his 14 locations and his gazillion providers and clinicians that he has to work with. So as we look at this, keep this in mind. And what I want you to do is think about what you do now. Because if you have that context as to how you handle this now, what Travis will share with us will be able to hopefully help you eliminate some of those barriers, some of those roadblocks that you have in place. Now, I added this slide, and the reason I did that is because as we think about this, as you send out information to a referral source or to the one who referred that patient to you, and you're attempting to update and upgrade that information to them, it becomes real interesting as to what happens in that other office. And so one of the things that's really critical is for you to think about, how can I best get that information? And we talked about, and I mentioned text, emails, or some other way of faxing as we look at it. So if you're the receiving end of information, how do you do this? How do you manage that? How do you create a log? Do you monitor it by individual chart? Or do you just simply hope that whatever referral documentation you're looking for comes back to you in a time frame that works well for your ability to see the patient? So that result of that visit then is very important. That needs then to be integrated into the chart. And is it simply boom, boom, integrated in, or is it by fax, gets stuck in a stack? Is it by email and gets stuck in a stack? And, does it get lost in an inbox? Where does it go? So again, there are decision points along the way that make a big difference for us as we look at how you or how you either A, receive that information or how you send it out. And reason that I think this is important is because if we go back to the previous slide, what is, again, the most effective way for you to get that information out? And how many times do you get calls from the referral point saying, I never did get that documentation. I got to find out where that documentation is. So then you have to scramble and send out that documentation again. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And if we can find a way to make all of this sort of work and come together, I think it would be really, really important. So what I hope I've done in this 5-minute discussion here is kind of giving you an idea about the fact that, hey, there is a process in place. Does my process work? Or is there a better way for me to make this process work, and kind of where we want to go and how to move forward with that? So given all of that, what our really key point today was to take advantage of the brains that are behind putting together some good operational pieces. So we want to talk to Travis Wright, who's the big title type guy for Eye Center of the South. And so we hope to spend the rest of our time together today is to actually look at this and see what we can do to find a better way for you to manage that whole process of that flow of getting that information back to your referring source, getting that information to the patient without taking a lot of time and without taking a lot of resources inside the practice. So let me start out by talking to my friend Travis. And we've gotten to know each other over the past few weeks. And Travis is a very interesting guy. And I think you'll really enjoy the opportunity to learn from him. So Travis, let's discuss, if we can, kind of what's going on at Eye Center of the South. And maybe you can give us a little bit of background, but also you can sort of talk about sort of what the challenges are that you've experienced as your practice has grown to its current state.
So first, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity. Owen, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this presentation. And everybody who's put this on has worked really hard to make sure we put something out there that hopefully will help everybody who's listening. And so I'm really glad to be here, and hopefully I can live up to Owen's description of me. And he embellished a little bit about me being the brains, but I'm a part of a team. And that's the key, is when you're going to a paperless type solution, you really need to develop a team that's organized and that's dedicated, and it's in the futuristic thinking of how to make processes easier and simpler. So if you go to, if you think back to Owen's charts, they were all over the place. They had a bunch of different options. They had a bunch of different things that things have to happen. And in an office that doesn't have the tools to make it streamlined, they get lost. Things get lost. Patients get lost. Referrals, like they were mentioning, referrals are not going out to like they need to, referral letters. So there's that communication standpoint with the outsourcing people that's bringing stuff in. They're the ones that are important to us. And if we are not able to communicate to them, we're going to lose patients. We're going to lose revenue. We're going to lose things. And delays are the worst thing. So many years ago, we started with Nextgen, and over the years, we developed a lot of strong relationships with them as far as figuring out the ways to help us become better for our patients, better for our staff, and better for our doctors. And so Nextgen Mobile for us helped out tremendously. We were able to take, as you can see on the slide, 4 transcriptionists and basically reallocate them. Reallocated them to different departments, whether it's a patient care assistant, whether it was in marketing, where it was in our resource that we have, program that we have, or a couple of them actually retired, and that was able to save us revenue. So we were able to really save money and be more efficient using that stuff. So I hope over the next few minutes that we're able to really identify some of you guys' issues and how we can make things better for you guys. And I can explain to you, maybe not necessarily what to do, but I can definitely explain to you all the things you don't need to do, because I think we've tried everything. So we know the mistakes that were made. Hopefully we can put you in the right direction. So,
hey, Travis, you've got how many locations? 14 locations?
14 locations. We have 25 different. We have 25 different doctors. We have 14 ophthalmologists, and the rest are made up of optometrists.
Mm-hmm.
And we cover 3 states.
Wow.
So communication is a key for us, because if you're in one state doing something and you're having to refer to another patient or another physician in another state, you got that ride home. You're doing like 90% of your work on that ride home. You're dictating on the ride home. It's like a 2-hour drive for us. So we're able to get a lot of stuff done that would normally take us many, many hours at the end of the day. But if you're in a drive time or even during patients, you could get a lot of stuff knocked out. So
okay, but what do you mean you can dictate and take advantage of things on the drive home? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So Nextgen Mobile, one of our biggest things that we had to do years ago, and I think everybody remembers, you had to dictate into a dictaphone, and the tape got took to somebody. Somebody then, when they had time, typed up everything, went back down to the doctor. The doctor then looked at it, reviewed, make sure everything was spelled correctly, signed off on it. It went back to somebody else. They then turned around and folded it, make sure the corrections were right, folded it, mailed it out, so forth and so on. And as you know, that process for us took 7 to 10 days, and that was if everything lined up right. Yeah, it was terrible. So when Nextgen Mobile came about, we were like, okay, so you can actually dictate in between patients. So whenever most of my physicians, whenever they're in between patients, they'll come out of the room. Hey, Ms. Smith, Dr. Smith, thank you for sending me blah, blah, blah. We really appreciate this. Here's what we found today. Thank you sincerely, blah, blah, blah. And then boom. And then within 24 to 48 hours, that thing is received by the person who referred the patient. And I cannot tell you enough how our referral source really started to appreciate that. During that time frame that we were transitioning, they just like, oh my Lord, I got everything in front of me on a one-day post-op. It's sitting in front of me when they come in. The patient's here. I have everything in front of me. I know what you did. I know what the patient had the day before. I know what implant was put in, and they were like ecstatic. And that was just a building block for what we started with. So the transitioning for one place to the other, one of the doctors is he's a retina doctor, so he sees like 70 a day, and he's very quick. So he rides on these trips over to another location. And then on the way back, he does all his dictating and all the stuff he needs to on his mobile app in the back while everybody else is driving. So it's really a luxury. So you don't have to get home and spend 3 hours going through charts to do that. So he was probably our biggest fan with it.
So, but Travis, you just talked a little bit about the travel, but you also said something that was interesting. If you go back to my slides, one of the first decision point was, how does that information get from the knowledge base that's inside the provider's clinician's head into the system? And you said that can be done instantaneously, following by what? Talking into your some dictating device or something like that. How does that work?
So with Nextgen Mobile, it's actually on the phone. You pull up the app, you have your schedule, you click. It's probably one of the most simplest processes I've ever seen. You click on the button, it's patient's there, you start dictating, you hit send. Somebody in some mythical area of the world pulls it up, types it up, and boom, sends it back within a few hours, and then it's approved to go out, and you're done.
Okay, so you said this mythical area. Now, do you have staff that you have internally that does all this transcribing or transcribing for you, or is it sent somewhere else?
Nextgen takes care of all of that. They really do. They do it for free, right, Cherry? I'm just kidding. They don't do it for free. But there's a low cost. The amount of money we're saving on transcription as a person versus how much money we're spending on letters that's being done is it's astronomical. At one point, we were saving like $50,000 a year just on the difference between what we were paying employees to transcribe versus what Nextgen's charging us to do these letters. So it's quick and easy, and they understand what we have a couple of doctors with some pretty strong foreign accents, and to be honest with you, they do a better job of transcribing that than the people we had hired. And so there's less time with mistakes. We don't have to keep sending it down and say, is this what you meant or is this what you meant? Generally, we have maybe a handful of mistakes in a week's time that they have to ask, what did you mean here?
So what you've done is you've made another decision point. You've outsourced your transcription to Nextgen, and that what they've been able to do for you is to turn that around in a matter of hours and that you've also circumvented the language issues and that sort of thing through the skill set that you've been able to buy through this outsourced arena then.
Correct. And it's very simple to use. I cannot stress to you enough, a lot of doctors thought it was going to be cumbersome, and it's opposite. It's actually the exact opposite. They are in and out of charts very quickly and very easily for the dictation. And we have most of our physicians take like an external photo or slit lamp photo or some type of picture of the patient and actually import it into the patient's chart at the same time. It's, like I said, a matter of seconds to get that, not only the picture taken to generate revenue and to show the patient right then and there exactly what's wrong with their eye or whatever, even dermatology with their mold or whatever. They can take a picture, document it, show them, and then turn around, put it in the chart. You're going to get paid for it. He comes outside, he dictates or he interprets the test. It's billed out, and then it's all said. It's done right then and there. You're able to generate revenue from that as well. So you got like two parts of this. Not only are you got a dictation standpoint where you're actually reducing costs for employees, and you're reducing the cost of how much it takes for a letter to go out and come back in, but you're also taking it and generating revenue from the device itself because you're able to charge for some of those things.
So, but you can charge for other things, but another component then of revenue generation is, has this made you more efficient so that you've actually either A, been able to see more patients during that regular time slot, or B, the provider, the clinician's been able to get some work-life balance in place and being able to get home at a reasonable time without having to spend the rest of the night trying to recover from the day?
It's mainly B. Truth be told, it's mainly B, because if you think about it, after a doctor is done for surgery, we do surgery and see patients. Most of our doctors do surgery and see patients in the same day. And most physicians will tell you if you're doing one, it's okay, but have to change your brain from surgery then to clinic or clinic to surgery is very difficult. So with the end of the day, they're ready to go home. And honestly, this has made their work-life balance so much better. They're so much happier because they feel like at the end of the day, they're walking out. I mean, we all walk out together. It's 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever the case is. Boom, we are done with patients. We all walk out. Where before, they were still kind of dictating into their stuff, reviewing the charts. This is simple, quick, and easy. And if there's anything that they forgot during the day to do, they say, you know what? I'm going to go home, pour me a glass of wine, lay in bed, watch TV, and I can dictate as I go, because there again, everything they need is right there in their hand. You don't have to have the big laptop. You don't have to have a security risk with a VPN. It's literally right there. It's super secure. It's in their hand, and they can take care of it from their comfort of their own home.
Well, okay, so now it sounds like as we look at today, most of your clinicians are using this product and very pleased with it. Can you kind of think back toward the time when you said, well, let's make a decision and let's go with this Nextgen mobile, and then how are you going to convince everybody that it's the right thing to do and get them on board in using the whole process?
Yeah, so we were kind of at a place where we had one of our main transcriptionists for our main doctors looking at retiring. And we went out to try to see if we could find somebody to replace, and it was just very difficult to find the transcriptionist. In our area, I guess it was just difficult to find a medical transcriptionist that could really keep up with the demand that we were going to have to put on to that person. And so we started looking at different avenues, and Nextgen reached out and had Nextgen. We were kind of using the Express engine for Nextgen for automated letters, which was a really neat tool. And then they said, well, hey, what about Nextgen mobile? I'm like, okay, explain that to me. So we went down this path. I'm like, oh, are you serious? None of my doctors are going to do that. They're not going to click the button and look for their chart. And they're not going to pull it. It's just going to be too cumbersome. They're going to have to put in a medical record number. I'll do the demo, but we're not going to do this. Like, we all saw that. Boom, they come in, they show the demo. They're like, yeah, the chart, here's your schedule. You click on the button, you click on that, and you start talking. I'm like, no, seriously, like, what else happens? They're like, that's it. It's click, click, done. I'm like, wow, okay, well, that's going to be different. So we started looking at how much we could cost for saving how much it would cost saving us from not hiring a person and how more efficient we would be. And then we really started looking at exactly the time frame it took for us to get a patient's letter out the door and into the hands of a referring physician. And we said, so 7 to 10 days is average. Now you're talking about 48. And to be honest with you guys, it's not 48 hours. I'm saying 24 to 48 because there's always those certain things that might take a delay. But I'm talking about like if something happens and the doctor doesn't talk clearly, we have a person that mumbles a little bit and they might have to go back and forth to figure out exactly what they're saying. I'm talking about the worst case scenario is 48 hours. Usually it's within 24 or even sooner. And so we started looking at that. We started doing the math and we started doing this. And I was like, how do we do this? How do we make this happen? And then it became a no-brainer. We started doing the math and you're saving money. It's more efficient. Doctors' lives weren't going to be hampered by 50 clicks and medical record, in there. It's just simple. And once we demonstrated with our busiest doctor, then it just caught fire. And they're like, oh, my Lord, if you can do this. And it just spread. Next thing you know, we take the rest of our transcription department, we put them in other places, or they retired because they were at that age anyway. So I hope that answered the question, Owen.
So basically what you said is you got 1 or 2 or 3 of the docs that really just sort of jumped on board with it. And then everybody sort of understood what the benefits were. And like wildfire, it spread across everybody. So virtually everyone is using it then, and you're moving forward.
Even doctors who don't dictate are using it for that external photo. We had to make sure we told them, like, okay, so it's not free. We got to pay a little bit of money. So you have to do at least X amount of external photos before you can, actually justify getting one. But now that they have one, they use it every month, and it helps generate revenue. I mean, it's a low cost for it. And you do a couple of photos, you've paid for that. You do a couple more, you've made some money. So there's a good portion of our physicians that don't dictate. We use generated letters, and they still use this just because it's a good tool, and being on call as well. Oh, and we didn't even talk about that yet.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so you basically have said that everybody bought into the whole kind of going through this thing. If you even think back a little bit further, I think you said the trigger point was that you were losing one of your transcriptionists. So as we think about the idea today, all the literature we read, everything we're seeing in the marketplace is the Great Resignation and the Great Awareness, whatever label is put on it, where a lot of people are either leaving their current job or not interested in going to a different location and so on. So I think there's a real issue, not only what you were facing, but what everyone else is facing with finding staff, retaining staff, and that sort of thing. So as you went forward, then you didn't replace the person that left. And what I think, what our slide says is that you've actually taken 4 FTEs out of your transcription department, and you've reassigned them to different areas. Did that concept help with the sale of the idea to the staff, so that they were buying into the idea, or how did that work then?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it was a little difficult to begin with because they thought we were replacing them. We were hey, we're getting this new technology. We don't need transcriptions anymore. So they were afraid they were going to lose their job. We're like, no, you're not losing your job. We're just going to take your job and move it to somewhere else. And a couple of them were excited about it. Now, we had a couple, obviously, we had one that she was not happy that we were trying to move her to somewhere else, and she decided to take a job somewhere else. But we were providing them with other opportunities to help the practice out. And one of them is still here. The other one's retired since, because most of these people were in their retirement stage anyway. But looking back on it, Owen, if I would have known then what I know now about how the workforce is going to be, this would have been a no-brainer. If the people are out there today trying to say, well, do I need to really do this? Is this something I really need to do? 100% this is something you need to do, because at the end of the day, it's so hard to keep staff, to find good staff, to keep staff, to retrain staff, all those things. With Nextgen Mobile, that's not your problem. That is Nextgen's problem. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You're using their staff. It's their problem to keep staff. It's their problem to do this. Yeah. It's not on you. And obviously, from a person in management, the less staff I have to try to replace or keep happy, the happier I am. And this is a process that I know every day that dictation is going to get done, letters are going to get done, pictures are going to be put into charts like they're supposed to. And if something doesn't work right, which I don't think it ever has, knock on wood, I call Nextgen, Nextgen fixes it. It has nothing to do with me. It's a phone call and then I let it go.
So you don't have, with the transcription department of 4 or 5 employees, you don't have the turnover issue that others might be facing from having an internal operation that they have to do.
Not in that department, but I think we all admit in all the other departments they are, but not in that department. That's one department we don't have to worry about.
Yeah, well, we know that the cost of turnover is huge. 50 to 75% of the annual pay that you make to an employee is what it costs you to replace. So just a cost saving idea there is that you don't have to worry about it, A, and B, you actually save the cost of having to deal with that turnover situation. So if we can then think about this again for a second, what you've been able to do is you've been able to help the clinician with their work-life balance, work-life integration. You've been able to help the referral source by getting information back to them in 24 to 48 hours. And then what you've been able to do is you've been able to save FTEs or reallocate those FTEs into areas where you've been able to use them for either providing better service or revenue generation, depending upon where they went.
That's correct.
Wow.
Very much so.
That's pretty amazing. So if we go back to my flow chart, that first one, then you made a decision. The doctor now has a tool that'll actually work easier in terms of getting that information into the system. Once it gets into the system using Nextgen, using your Nextgen EMR and your Nextgen mobile, all of it comes together so that you've got the documentation inside your system now. And then from there, you press a button or two and it goes out to the referral source. Does that go out by fax or by email? How do you send that out?
We do ours by fax right now because most of our referrals are in like kind of rural areas, and so fax machine works great for them. They don't have like a lot of upscaled equipment or. I'll be honest with you, there's sometimes you go to the old fax machine with the phone on it. I mean, they have that type of stuff. And so we do fax for now because that's what our referring people are currently used to. But now with the patients, we do portal and we do the text communication too. So.
Okay. So you're able then to get that information again out as quickly as possible, almost instantaneously based on the modeling that you would have. I think that's pretty amazing that you've been able to do. So your transition worked for your clinicians and your transition worked for your staff members in terms of kind of where this goes. Now you mentioned that the phrase on call. How does this device, does the fact that this information is more timely input into your EMR and so on, does this help you with your call situation? How do you see that?
Well, let me go back on real quick because I wanted to add something that just popped in my head. I'm so sorry.
No.
So if you remember when you dictated a letter, they transcribed all that other stuff. If you remember, that still had to get scanned into the EHR. So if you think about it, your medical records department, instead of scanning, 200, I don't remember what we did a week. I'm so sorry, guys. That was a long time ago, and I don't have that data in front of me. But if you're talking about scanning 200 documents for referral letters a week into Nextgen and filing them, if you don't have to do that anymore because once you dictate, it goes and it comes back and boom, it's in the chart. You got to think about the cost savings with that because I don't know what the man hours were, but you're definitely cutting a huge workload off of the medical records department. And so just another thought process of trying to find ways why this could save you money or generate revenue, whichever way you want to call it, it could be beneficial from a financial standpoint. To your original question about being on call, all the doctors hate the word call. No doctor wants to be on call. It's the worst thing in the world. However, Before a physician was on call, they would have to either have the big computer, have somebody would go into their office to have to log into a computer to see what's going on. All these troubles. With Nextgen Mobile, you got everything at the chart. You got everything in your hand. You pull up the Nextgen, you see the patient, you put the name in, you find the person, you look and see what the problem is. You can communicate to the ER, to the primary care physicians that's seeing the patient on a Saturday, because we're kind of in the country, so our patients still go to our doctors on Saturday, and they'll do house calls kind of. And so you have everything at the tip of your fingertips. I mean, they're just right here. So you pull it up, you address it, you take care of it, and then it's done with. And I mentioned earlier, even on the dictation part, you can be in your house, in your bed, watching TV, and you get that 2 o'clock in the morning phone call, and you're like, okay, so this person's complaining of this issue or problem. Let me see how serious it is. Stay in bed, roll down, click the button. Nope, it's not that big a deal. Hey, John, listen, I'll see the patient tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We'll be good to go. He tasked it out to the on-call tech. They make the appointment. They come the next morning. He's ready to go. So I think from that kind of work balance life we were talking about for the physician, I think that also adds into it, because they don't have to – being on call is still not good, because no doctor wants to be on call, but they don't have to add on what's wrong with the patient or automatically having to go see the patient or doing that. And they do a lot of things over the phone these days.
So what that, again, we're talking about saving time for the provider while they're in the office or while they're driving. You're also now talking about saving time when you're on call, because you don't have to fumble for information. You don't have to ask 15 questions as background. You've got the information right there available to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing, I think, in terms of the cost benefit of what we're looking at here. So have you been able to look at that a little bit in terms of, again, that work-life balance? You said you've been able to get the doctors home quicker and that sort of thing. The big question that comes to mind here then is retaining patients and retaining referral sources. In other words, have you retained your referral sources? Have you lost referral sources? Have you gained referral sources? Or have you lost or gained patients because you've been able to do this kind of?
Yeah, so very, very good question. Kind of difficult to track for us at this particular point in time, but I will say this. We have noticed when we were getting our referral letters back out to the referring doctors, I was kind of playing the role of a liaison at one point, a physician's liaison. And when I would go back, they were astounded and they were happy that they were getting those letters back so quickly. And so then we saw a bump in our referrals from those physicians that usually are, you know, sometimes they get a little feelings hurt because it took so long for them to get some information. So like, well, I'm not going to send it to them again, you know. So we noticed a bump from a few physicians saying, oh, wow, since y'all are doing this, I can send this better because I can get the data and I get the data back and I don't have to scramble from the patient comes in. So there again, if you think about it, at the end of the day, as physicians, they don't want to look bad in front of their patients. They want to know what's going on. They want to know what happened. So if they're sitting in front of a patient saying, hey, how's everything going? Oh, you didn't, Dr. X didn't tell you what happened yesterday or 2 days ago? Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, well, we had this whole thing done. Oh, so it's one of those scenarios that their mind is saying, I don't want to look bad in front of the patient. So if I have a letter before I go to the room and say, oh, this is what happened, when they go and say, Miss Jones, Dr. X told me yesterday this is what happened. I'm so sorry to hear that. They think that both doctors picked up the phone and actually called each other, but in reality, they did not. They just used a simple device on their phone to communicate back and forth quickly and easily that allowed the patient to feel like they were being taken care of personally by each doctor. And I'm not saying doctors don't do that, but I think we all know physicians are so busy. Sometimes you can't pick up the phone and call. These letters, these things, these communication standpoints that go back and forth, it gives the appearance of that personal touch, but with the reality of they're seeing more patients at the time that all that's happening in the background anyway.
Yeah. My last flowchart process map that I put up there was from the office that's receiving information. I'm wondering if you getting it out in 24 to 48 hours has reduced the number of repeat or re-requests for information. Have you got a feel for that kind of thing?
I'm actually friends with several of the, because we're a small town. I mean, I know it sounds like we're this big, huge organization, but we're really not. We're a small town that's just spread our method or patient care to other locations, but we're a small town. And so if you work here, you usually start here and you go for so long and then you work at another location or you work for a referral source. I mean, we're not going to keep the employees if they want to spread their wings and do something different. We're all about that. And so whenever they go to these other sources and we still remain friends, they're like, oh man, so great that this happened because now I don't have to call y'all 30 times. The doctor's not yelling at me because there's nothing in the chart saying this happened or this didn't happen. So they were very happy. Now, maybe not everybody, but they were very happy to be able to have that stuff back to them in a very timely manner for sure.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that on the receiving end, if I get something in a timely manner that's still fresh in my mind about this particular patient or about that particular situation, I'm going to react to it. So even as a staff member, I'm going to put that in the chart, take that fax document, scan it into the chart. I'm going to do a lot of things rather than, I don't have to worry about that. Or, that patient was in yesterday and they won't be back for 2 more weeks. So then it goes into that fax log thing and never gets transacted. So I think there's a real benefit to the receiving piece down to benefit to you because you're getting fewer of those. Hey, can you resend this? Can you resend this? Can you resend it? So I suspect
totally agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. So you've gotten a benefit from that perspective as well. Wow. That's really kind of a neat, very neat process. I think that you've got going, and so.
Well, now, Owen, I'm gonna stop you there. I'm gonna be honest with you. When we first started this, we didn't know it was going to help all that. I mean, you got to understand when we first started this, we were just trying to plug a hole in a leaking boat. You're like, okay, we're losing a transcriptionist. Boom, let's plug that hole. What has happened is this has expanded everything, and it's really rolled, kind of tumbled into the right direction for all these other benefits. I mean, we had no clue we were going to have this many benefits when we first started. I mean, I would love to sit here and tell you I'm smart enough to realize this was going to save us all this money and make all these things great. And I would love to take credit for that, but that's not the case. We were just trying to fix a problem that was coming at us. And then it just started to go better and better and better and better. And we're like, oh, wow, we're doing more. This is making this person happy. What else can we use? How else can we use that? We started using the Express engine more. I mean, all these things started rolling together. And now we have a pretty good system to get the information out to the patient, the referrals or the doctors or even some of the patients pretty quickly and pretty easily. That doesn't put our staff too cumbersome and as efficient as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's pretty amazing then. So as you let me go way back again because you just raised a question for me that you had an issue. You had that employee that was leaving, so you had to figure out something. How difficult was it to get the doctors in your leadership group, your executive committee, your decision-making folks, however it was, how difficult was it to convince them, or what did you need to do to convince them, or what process did you go through to get to a decision that says, yes, this is something we want to do?
So that was a long time ago, Owen, and I'm getting older and I can't remember, but I think I paid them all $20 just to trust me, and they were okay with that. No, I'm just kidding. Bribery was what I started with, but no, it was a scenario when we sat down and showed them the ease of it. We said, let's demo it for a little bit, and Nextgen was able to let us demo it for a minute or two, and then we were able to turn around and get that one guy to believe in it and then show it, and then we started running numbers. I sat down with the controller. We started looking at numbers that we could be saving, and we started looking at how much was getting scanned in, how many documents were being done. And then it was just a no-brainer. I mean, once you start putting the numbers that you can save on paper and put them in front of the people that make the decisions, it's kind of a no-brainer situation. If you do it correctly, it should be easy because I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, you just think about what we've talked about over the last few minutes. Those things, we didn't put a dollar amount on them, but even if you put a low dollar amount on each of the things we're talking about, you're still talking about a lot of savings. You're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of savings every year.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah.
It was not that hard.
Okay. because again, one of the things that happens is you saved, and I'll just use a number, you saved $5,000, you saved $10,000 in year one, okay? Well, then it gets forgotten about because you didn't get the additional $10,000 savings the next year because it was already in the system. Okay. Right. So what then is necessary is to reinforce, let's keep using the system. As we bring in a new clinician, let's make sure that new clinician is in fact fully indoctrinated, oriented to the use of the tool that we have available and that sort of thing, so that savings is not just a one-time sort of thing, it's an ongoing benefit to the practice for permanently.
Well, like with the FTEs, once you start taking those people off that you're, especially these days, like right now is crucial. Think about how many employees you lose on a monthly or quarterly basis. If you had somebody that you could reallocate, that's a little more seasoned person that's been a part of the company for a long time. That's what our transcriptionists were. They were people who've been with the company for 15, 20 years. And I maybe that's different than other places. I don't know. But if you can transition that person that's really committed to your company into a place that can benefit the company better, there's your savings. And then every year that person's employed and you're not having to replace that person with somebody that's newer or not quite committed to, this generation is a little different than what I was raised on. I was that loyal commitment, one of those scenarios that was building me. The generation today is a little different. They're looking for the next best thing, which is, more power to them. But every year that person that you put in that spot stays with the company, so you don't have to hire a non-I Center South person, you're making money that way. And there again, this was a stepping stone to look at the pictures that were able to be uploaded, the on-call stuff that was able to save the time, the amount of scanning that we weren't able to do. I mean, there again, it was a small thing that kind of spiderwebbed out to encompass a lot of our organization. And like you said, when a new doctor comes in, 100%, we said, this is what you do. We just hired somebody maybe like a year ago. We said, here's the scenario. You're going to do form letters. We're going to use Express Engine from form letters. I need you to tell me the letters that you want based on the patients, based on the visit type. You tell us what it is. We'll program it to generate if it's with the patient in the background. And then at night at 12:01, they get forwarded out to the people they need to get forwarded out to. And then if you need to dictate, you're going to go this method. If you want to have this luxury of having this app on your phone to go to different places on call, you're going to have to do 10 external photos a month and you're fine. You do that and everything works out. And like you said, it starts that person that's coming out of school or whatever on the right foot. So in terms of, I think we've kind of covered most of what you've had to go through. What does the future look like? Do you think that there's more opportunities to look to Nextgen for technology support that are going to help you with some other of the barriers that you might have in the practice? We're always looking to advance things. The key to today's, I don't know if the audience is aware of this, but every year doctors are taking pay cuts. So unfortunately for them, we're having to find inventive ways to either reduce staff or make it more efficient to see more patients. So I think Nextgen's been really good on the cutting edge of allowing us to take their technology and put it into our clinical flow to see how we can see more patients or reduce the amount of FTEs or whatever you want to do to find ways to generate revenue. Because, in my field, cataract surgery used to be $1,500 19, 20 years ago when I first started. Now it's down to $500. And that's a huge difference for us. So that money's got to come somewhere. The good news is minimum wage and the cost of living and everything's getting more expensive and doctors are making less money. So that will be good for everybody in the future. No, I'm totally wrong with that. That will be horrible for everybody because we're going to lose a lot of doctors to retirement at an early age because they're not making enough money to enjoy their life, and that's going to put a damper on our medical field as far as across the country, I believe. So, does anybody have any questions out there, Todd?
Well, let me ask one other question. Refer to this because one of the things that was really interesting is when you implemented it, did your older doctors go along with it? In other words, those that are thinking about retiring, if you can find more efficient ways to give them work-life balance, there'll be less burnout, there'll be less facing issues and so on. So would you see this as almost a good physician retention tool as well?
Maybe. The only senior doctor, he didn't go to it just because he already had a system in place that basically used form letters. And so he didn't really notice a difference in his life, because when they walked out and it was a cataract eval, they were going to do a cataract referral, and it was going to be formed out and express engined out later that night. So he didn't know a difference. So unfortunately, I can't speak for that because our one senior technician, our one senior doctor didn't go to it. Now, the ones that are, 55-ish or so, they loved it. They love the fact that they don't have to worry about it as much, and that because they're still taking call and because they're still having to build up their practice. The 75-year-old, he was I'm stuck in my ways. I'm good. I don't dictate anyway. So, he was good anyway, so he didn't have to worry about it.
But that's the key point, that the 55-year-old who may have been wanting to retire at 65 could now actually work until 70 or 72, simply because the work-life balance is improved and will continue to improve as you continue to look for more technological components. So I think you were making a point there. I think you and I have chatted we could talk for another hour on this, but let's see if there's
Probably
any
so.
questions.
I want to hear from somebody else.
Yeah, let's see if there are any questions from the audience here.
All right,
Todd?
great discussion, guys. And if you have questions, please type them into the chat, but we have a few here. Travis, how long does it take to implement a system like this and get everyone up to speed?
Initial start, Nextgen takes about 4 to 6 weeks for implementation. After that, if you have a good core organized team that works well and you have a commitment from the doctor, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. It's very simple.
Okay.
And you can have everything done in 2 months for sure.
Okay,
wow.
Great. And Travis, another one for you. What do you wish you knew when you started down the process that you know now?
Honestly, I would have done this years ago. I mean, we got into Nextgen Mobile a year after it happened. Nothing really, truth be told. Everything that we did back then, we did the best we could with what we had. The Nextgen Mobile, if I had to go back and do it again, I would have started us all out a little sooner and really, I'm not going to say cram it down the doctor's throats, but I would have definitely enticed them to use it more, because they're like, man, why didn't I go to this? As we implemented one doctor at a time, they're like, man, why didn't I do this to begin with? I wish I was the first doctor. So I would have probably tried to sell it to them and know all the stuff that I knew from the financial side of savings and the ease of use. I would have talked about that to them to begin with to maybe get them on board a little quicker.
Great. Owen, what are some of the main causes for practices getting off schedule, and any advice on how to address them?
Okay, how many hours and days do we have to talk about doctors getting off schedule? Well, I think, again, obviously you have that one exceptional patient that gets in the way. But what I like to think about is roughly 80% of every physician's day is pretty much the same. Meaning you might see patients with different diagnosis and different treatment needs, but the 15-minute slot works. And so what they need to do is they need to look at how can they be more efficient in dealing with that 80%. And once they get through that 80%, then the exception doesn't have such a dent in the flow. And so I like to think that, but I also really like what Travis said about the doctors when they can walk out of the room and dictate and get that taken care of right away when it's fresh in their mind. Being able to do that, I think that helps the whole workflow throughout the day and eliminates that having to stay from 5 to 7 to try to catch up, or get your pajamas on and get your glass of wine and then sit there and dictate at home for a long time. So, what causes that also is the types of delays that I think are critical is, if you're receiving information from a referral source, do you get it in a timely manner and do you get it implemented into your system so that information is readily available to that referral source so that they can do things. I think there's just a number of issues that are like that can make such a big difference. And if we go back to my flow chart, the decision points that were identified in that process can really help us and help you identify, you being a member of the audience, help you identify where those gaps are and identify your own personal gaps along the way.
Okay, looks like we have time for one more question. This one's to either one of you. For practices that want to start going paperless and mobile, where's the best place to start?
Owen, do you want me to answer, or you got it? What do you?
Well, you go ahead and start, since you like to talk more than I do. How's that?
I do. So yeah, the best place to start is to form a team. You got to get a good core team. You got to get people that are committed to seeing this through, and you got to have buy-in from the partnership. Once you get that set up, then you find the EHR, EMR, whatever you want to call it. You find the person that is there to help implement it, and y'all get a game plan and you set it up, and you got to understand for 6 months, at least 6 months, you're dedicated to that, and you and your team are going to have to make sure you set small goals to end the big goal, and you got to push through the obstacles. One of the biggest things I can say is to explain to everybody there's going to be some hurdles, but we're okay. We can push through those and have a game plan, have small goals, and have a good organized team that are going to be dedicated to make it happen. That's my first advice for anyone.
I think let me add to that. I love the concept of the team, but also the idea is let's keep aware of the technology. So people that are attending our discussion today are actually at a beginning point, a starting point that's even ahead of where you were. So they've got an idea now. They need to put the team together to be able to move forward. And one of the keys on this is the time frame for decision making and what goes into the decision making that happens. So the more knowledge that you can get from the time that we've spent together today helps you in terms of moving forward with the implementation. So then that information gets to your team, the team accepts it, the team moves forward, and like you said, in 2 months you can have this whole thing implemented in any practice. And one other thing we haven't really talked about, just to add this, you're eye center of the South, but this is not just for ophthalmology. This is a component and a concept that fits in every single specialty. So I hope that people haven't thought about this as, if I'm not an ophthalmologist, I can't use it. No, use it. Anybody can use it to help move the efficiency forward.
I had a talk last year, and funny you mentioned that. I had a talk with the OBGYN, the entire OBGYN of the state of Alabama. I had a presentation to do with them about how Nextgen could really solve a lot of their issues that they were having in their field with the current EHR they had. And I'll be honest with you, some of them went to it, some of them didn't go to it. But like you said, this type of stuff is, I know I'm talking about eyes because that's what I'm familiar with, but you can plug and play this into anywhere. And I think it would relate to pretty much every different specialty that's out there. And if it didn't, I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if it didn't.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have today. On behalf of Nextgen Healthcare, I'd like to thank Owen Dahl and Travis Wright for sharing their insights today, and you, the audience, for joining us on today's program. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, guys.